Hello, I want to say thank you, viewers and listeners, for taking time to tune in to the Old Henderson's Real News Show. Of course, you know we are here with the real news, something you don't hear too often. You hear a lot of propaganda from preachers and politicians on radio, television, and many times you read this kind of stuff on the newspapers, in the newspapers. But on this show, on the Old Henderson Real News Show, you're going to find that you will be getting the real news, no propaganda, no hearsay. We will be giving you factual, researched information and strategies and plans that can teach you how to change your life, your status, your family, and your community in 30, 60, 90 days. Now, that is simple, folks. My dad talked to me today. He said, "Son, are you keeping it simple? Are you keeping it simple so a third grader to the PhD can understand what you are saying?" I said, "That's right, Pop. You taught me that. Talk so everybody can understand, because the young person will be ruling one of these days. So they need to learn when they are young." So that's what I do, folks, and that's why we call this show Organize. Don't criticize the human enemies of mankind, their relatives, and their corporate supporters. If you do that, they are very pleased with you. They enjoy hearing you criticize them because they know you're not doing anything for yourself. And when I say you know what I'm talking about. I'm talking about black people in the South, all over the United States and worldwide. That's what this show is about, teaching you how you must learn to create new men, new leaders, including females, and teach them how to determine their destiny from birth to death by controlling 5 areas of activity where they're in the majority. Anywhere in the world where black people are in the majority, started on the precinct level, on the state level, in a region, in a city, in a small town or a rural area, wherever it is, anywhere in the world, you ought to control from birth to death 5 areas of activity. Number 1, your education and training. Number 2, your own religion. Number 3, principles of leadership, so you can train young people. Number 4, economic development. And number 5, politics. If you don't control those areas of activity in areas where you're in the majority, ladies and gentlemen, you will always be considered an outcast. You will be considered a non-entity in America, in the community where you live. And most people know that if you control the area where you're in the majority in those 5 areas of activity, you will get some respect from the corporate leaders, from the elected and appointed officials, from the preachers in your community, because they can see day by day that you are in control of your destiny from birth to death. And they want to change that. And that's why I will be teaching you, when we talk about organize, don't criticize, how to make permanent changes that will last in your community for 300 years. Listen to me now, folks. 300 years. Most countries, or most groups, don't dominate too long in one area, no more than 300 years. They usually then fade away and gradually return in 300 to 500 years. So just because you are not considered today as a real person in America and in the world as a group of black people, that is temporary. You can change it if you learn to remember one thing: organize. Don't criticize others. Pool your resources. Train your own leaders. Build coalitions with others. We call them non-binding, permanent solutions and contracts with others. Coalition building is set up for the purpose of acquiring or obtaining 1 or 2 things on a period of time, a specific period of time, and then if it has to disappear, it'll disappear. You want what we call no permanent friends, no permanent enemies, because there will be reverses in both areas as the needs change if you're controlling your destiny from birth to death. And that's why this show, Organize, Don't Criticize, is part 5 of 10 series. The last few weeks, we talked about part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4 on yesterday. And today we will be giving you a continuation of this process, and you will learn how to create a new man, a new woman. Today you will learn how to reinvent yourself and change your status, change your family, change your community. And with these skills that I will be giving you during this series, you'll be able to start changing these things in 30, 60, or 90 days. Now, yesterday, or the last time some of you were listening, we were talking about, from the beginning, how to create your control of your area from birth to death. And we told you generally, this is a short summary, that if you want to change things, you have to start with new people. You have to start with the young people. Old folks not going to do anything that's significant after they pass 60 years of age if they are elected or appointed to a position of responsibility. Most of them, not all, most, about 98% of them just want to take it easy and retire in 3 to 10 years. They're not going to shake the apple tree. They have enough apples. You don't, but they do. So they're not going to listen to you. So that's why you have to forget about the incompetent and all the other elected and appointed officials that's not looking out for your interests. You have to create your own. And if you want to do that, you have to start with the young folks. Start with them in middle school, high school. I always say from age 13 to 40. That's who you want to get ready, because those young people will be in positions of responsibility in 3 to 5 years if you start with them at 13 through age 40. Because most political appointments, most areas where you can run for office, you can start at 18 or 21 years of age. And to become president, all you have to be is able to read, write, and think. You have to have no educational requirements. All you have to do is live in the area, be of a certain age, and have enough money to win the vote. And you can then hire people that can do the thinking for you, make all the recommendations, and all you do is have your chief of staff to whisper in your ear and tell you the best thing to do after you read the 2 or 3 recommendations that they give you. That's the way it's done. A lot of people are going to hear this. They are going to say, well, Doc, that's not the way it's done. Say it's more complicated than that. No, it's not. I'm telling you from experience. I've worked in those areas for 50 years. Local, state, and federal entities, foundations, schools, colleges, universities, and that's the way it's done. The top cat, the top leader, reads less, thinks less, talks less than all the other folks that gives him or her that information. All they do is get summaries, talking points, and recommendations, usually 1 to 5, and say, Mr. Leader, this is the result of this study, and all of this is on one page. This is the what we call analysis of this 500-page legislation. I told you, 1 page, 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 recommendations, and you ought to make the recommendations in this order. You're going to have them highlighted or numbered, and you have to make that decision. And if you have hesitation, they'll tell you which one to make, because many times they know that you have gotten to the point where you have been around a long time. You're old, you're ineffective, or you're arrogant. You don't want to listen, but you will go on and do something, knowing it's right or wrong, don't care too much, because you just want to stay in office and get something done. Now, I know this is not what most of you all have been taught. You have been taught that in America, in the world, there's something called fairness. There's something called justice. There's something called equality and equity. Does not happen, folks, anywhere in the world. But there is something called money, power, influence, and the war machine. Those things will destroy you if you don't control your destiny from birth to death in areas where you're in the majority. Now, we stopped off on yesterday when we were doing our presentation, and we were talking how to recruit those young folks at we call that early age. And just for today, I will talk about those from 13 to 40 years of age. And of course, we told you earlier in some of the previous presentations that you must start working with those youngsters in the home first when they're about 2 months old. We're not going to go through that. But now we want to let you know they're out of home. They're out of the home. They're probably in middle school now, in graduate school, or they might be in college or whatever. And now you can deal with it. And once you do that and get them all to the point where they are registered voters and registered to vote and voting, then you got a person that is headed in the right direction. Just because one is a registered voter and he or she doesn't vote because they don't like what's going on, that person is what I call a non-entity. They're not worth the sugar that goes into a cake. I'm telling you, folks, those kind of folks that don't vote in America, don't vote if they have an opportunity anywhere in the world because they don't like the politicians or make a decision for appointed and elected officials in other areas and agencies. They just say, I don't like that person. I'm not going to vote for them. I'm not going to support them. That's what they want you to think. Because they have a core group, a small group, 10, 15, 25% of the population, or the interest groups that's going to support them. And all they want to do is get a majority vote. Sometimes it's just a few thousand out of a million that would put these folks in office. But if you have started training the people that we talked about last week and previous weeks and have them all at the point where they are registered and they are voting on a regular basis, you then will have a young person where you have them trained to be interested in local, state, and what I call national affairs. And after a certain age, then you can include that international affair arena in their minds. And once they get to that point where they're out of high school, starting to college, or starting to work, you can then train your people by putting them in positions of responsibility where they can learn. We call that the internship, where you put those young people in positions where they can be on boards and commissions, on board of directors, where they can be assigned to local public and private agencies, where they can be assigned to commissions and what we call ad hoc committees, where they're just there for 2 or 3 months to get a specific thing done. Every time you have an issue in your community, you shouldn't go and waste your time getting the same people, like they do in most states, the same people, and put that same 30 or 40 members on various commissions and boards, no matter whether it's economic development, commerce, justice, or whatever. Same folks. And if you look at your newspapers, you're going to see that the same individuals, the same family members for generations, always on certain boards, commissions, agencies. That is not good, folks. That's why you're suffering. That's why you're considered as a non-entity. That's why you are not regarded as a real American, as a real international person. You're just here, like a bubble in the ocean. You're not going to last very long. But once you start getting these young people on these boards and commissions, then you're going to do something else that's important with these young trainees. you're going to create and monitor what we call an intersecting alliance with elected and appointed officials and, of course, corporate leaders. You got to get all those folks together. They make the policies, they make the rules, they make all the regulations, they write the guidelines, and they fund these areas. And don't think they're going to make those decisions in committees. They're going to make these decisions before they get to the committee meeting. But if the young person there is listening and learning and saying, look, they came here ready to vote. How do they do that? They will learn how to do that. So when you get this intersecting alliance with these politicians elected and appointed, and I cannot exclude the preachers, keep it in mind, whatever you do in the community, you can't exclude the preachers. And of course, you got to talk about those public officials that managing your so-called education, your so-called miseducation that they put on you, and been doing this since, I would say, 1866. I'm talking about you black folks that don't like to hear the word, that want to think you a real American, that you're respected in America by your current elected and appointed officials and corporate leaders. They have no respect for you. You don't have rights that's generated through the Declaration of Independence, through the Constitution of your state, through the federal Constitution. The federal judges never cared anything about you as a group. The Supreme Court of America, the United Nations, and other agencies cared nothing about you, still don't, because they know you don't control anything. They know all you're going to do is criticize and sit down and pray and refuse to work and study and learn how you can change your destiny from birth to death. When you get to that point, they will sit up just like they sitting on a bed of pins in the chair. When you start rising, thinking, and acting for yourself, starting in 30, 60, or 90 days. We're going to talk about it, folks, and in order to do this, when you start putting these young people together from 13 years of age to 40, you're going to have to train them specifically so you can put them on boards of control, put them on commissions that's working with the elected and appointed officials, especially those politicians. You want to put those on that corporate board that's managing the big businesses, industries in your community. You want to get some of those young people in the non-denominational sector and the big-time denominational groups, and let them sit around there and learn something so they can watch those preachers and priests and others that are making decisions that's going to determine what happens to your money. But many times when you understand one thing that we've been teaching for many years is that all the people that I mentioned, all of them, the preachers, the politicians, elected and appointed, the corporate leaders, are all working for you. They don't work for themselves. They work for you, but you allow them to work for themselves and make decisions that's going to take care of them as individuals, their friends, and special interest groups that support them financially. Don't ever forget it. They care nothing about you. Most of you don't believe me because you don't want to say anything bad about your local preacher. Nothing bad about your elected appointed officials. Nothing bad at all about the corporate leaders. Do you have the same justice and the same rights as other Americans, as black people, as people of what I call the dark hue? Of course not. But a lot of you like to shatter yourself, put your head down low in the sand, and say, oh yeah, I feel good. It's all right to be here in America. It's all right to be here in Africa, in Asia, in the Middle East, in Latin America as a black person. It's all right. We're going to do better later. All we're going to do is pray for the Lord to look out for us. Folks, I've been telling you for many years, All the black people throughout the world have been praying since the 1400s for liberation. And as the records show, the only one that's liberated is the one that created himself and his group as new people that wanted to pool their resources, create their own leaders, and then form coalitions and fight. Listen to me, fight, which means they organize and control their destiny in those 5 areas of activity that I mentioned, from birth to death, for the next 300 years. That's what has been happening. So I was about to tell you, in order to make these things permanent, when you start working with people, you can't expect them to do things free. If you want a leader that's always working and not getting paid, you are wasting your time. You're going to create someone that the special interest group's going to control. Listen to me now. Some of you don't want to hear the real news. I told you before, you want to hear propaganda from preachers, politicians, and corporate leaders. But I'm telling you, in your local churches, in your community organizations, like the NAACP, the Urban League, what we call regular neighborhood associations, and all these other groups, folks, you have to create a line item in your budget where you're going to fund, recruit, train, and develop the young people from 13 to age 40 that you want to be in a position of leadership. You can't expect volunteers all the time. Even the Ku Klux Klan paid the chief wizard on a monthly or yearly basis. That's what you have to do. You have to pay certain people so they won't have to work 3 or 4 jobs, so they won't have to be missing their jobs, so they won't have to be missing their schooling. You pay them. When they're young, you might want to call it an internship. When they are what we call up in their early ages, 21 to 30, you might want it called a board member stipend. And when they get 35 to 40 years of age, you might want to call it a salary. And you have this budget, a line item budget to train these folks and develop these people so they can be the future leaders. So when the current ineffective leaders that are not interested in no one but themselves get to the point where they are tired, where they are sick, where they die in office, you would have someone that's trained. Now, how do you get one ready to be trained to take over when one of these old, ineffective, elected or appointed officials or corporate leader dies or retires? You have to develop what we call a coaching and mentoring system that's designated for the interns or the young people that you have paid to learn things. You have to get those mentors and assign them to your individual selected interns that you are training. Who are you going to get to do that? Find someone in your community that's not in those positions of responsibility that I mentioned, in those institutions that are maintaining this status quo, that have changed your pecking order in economics, politics, and religion from number 2 to number 10 or less in the last 50 years. You got to work with those folks, though, while they're in office. You just go and put some of your interns with these organizations, but find someone in the community with those same skills that are independent, and let them be the ones to come to your community organization, come to your church where you're training these people. Your church and your community organization should be the training sites. That's where you get your training. I told you before, I've been telling you for years, you don't get your training in the school system because the public school system is only set up to train about 10% of the students. And we call that little old group the honor students. They cared nothing about the other students. They know they are failing. They create failing programs and won't even change them because the parents don't pay attention to what's going on. And I'm going to tell you, folks, I will give you some more information in just a few minutes because we are getting ready for what we call an intermission. We want the underwriters to talk a little bit. We want some advertisers to talk a little bit about what's going on in the community. And we're also looking for additional underwriters and sponsors of the Old Henderson Real News Show. Organize, don't criticize. We want you to call us at 601-201-1957 and say, I want to sponsor your show. We want to do something to help ourselves before it's too late. We want this word to be all over the world. All over the world. So, folks, we will be back in just a few minutes, and thank you. And while you are listening to the commercials, call someone. Especially get those kids out of that back room. Many of them out of school now, or didn't go to school, and force them to listen to this show. Because those are the people that's going to be ruling you. That's going to provide the leadership for you in just a few years. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Are you dreaming? Becoming an entrepreneur, but you're not sure where or how to start? At Entrepreneurs Academy 101, our online program will guide you step by step on how to start and grow your own business. We offer courses such as how to write a business plan, how to create a budget, and so much more. Our online training program is designed for you to learn at your own pace, and there's no set order to complete this program. Because our academy is online, you have the choice to learn with a group, with friends, or individually. Upon completion of the entire curriculum, you will receive a certificate of achievement to acknowledge that you have completed the training needed to become a successful entrepreneur. So enroll today to design the life that you love. Contact your entrepreneur coach, Brenda Myers, at 601-672-0695 or visit our website at www.entrepreneursacademy101.com for more information.
Have you had your Earth Blend coffee today? At Earth Blend Coffee, we take pride in offering you the very best of beans across the world, blended and roasted to perfection, giving you superior quality and satisfying and flavorful taste. Experience the world in one cup with Earth Blend Coffee.
To order, visit earthblendcoffee.co now.
Okay, folks, this is Eld Henderson's Real News Show. Organize, don't criticize. We are continuing on this 10-part program. We call it 10 Points or 10 Parts. And we're talking about how to create new leaders, how to create a new man that's going to be trained starting at age 13 to 40 to put you in a position of responsibility where you're going to have competent, trained individuals that will determine your destiny from birth to death in 5 areas of activity that will last for at least 300 years. And we've gotten to the point now where you have all your folks trained to the point where they are ready to be assigned. I told you already that they are going to be put up with mentors and coaches, people that's going to show them through their modeling about how to be a leader, even though they might not be the one in the church. They might not be the one that's politically appointed. They might not be a corporate leader. But I tell you, folks, you want to have a mentor like that to come to your church training program. Go to the local schools, the few that will allow those folks to come in, and call them to come and share information with your interns. Now, once you do that, folks, you're then going to be able to teach them something that the ineffective leaders that are currently working for you which I call working against you, you are going to do something a little different, and that is you're going to teach those interns how to deal with a standardized, transparent, and accountability system in all the departments that you place them in. There are certain systems that are foolproof. They are standardized, they are transparent, and you can account for every penny, every decision you made, when you did it, and how you did it, who voted for it, who voted against it. That's the way you do it, folks. You don't have secret meetings where you decide how to spend $2 or $3 million and half of the team, or what I call 49% of the people on the board that's elected or appointed, on the commission, on the council, don't even know what you're talking about. You didn't even share your decision with them. They don't even have the paperwork to know what was in the contract or what was in the proposal. They just there. And that creates problems, folks. And it shows people worldwide that if you have people like this that are working in systems where you don't have any transparency or accountability, where people can see exactly what you're doing, you're going to have effective problems that's going to impact you from birth to death. But if you can be accountable and transparent, you will have protective problems that you resolved, that's going to move you from where you are to where you want to be. And all you want to be is an equal system with an equal opportunity to work in the place that's going to pay you a livable wage and give you an opportunity to make decisions that's going to control your destiny from birth to death for 300 years. And the last thing you do when you get all these young people assigned to these entities, you then want to look at them yearly and evaluate them. And most of the programs that I'm familiar with, they usually have a yearly awards program where they celebrate success of the people they have trained and give them awards and certificates. Awards and certificates, and show that they rated themselves in their training from 85 to 100%. And anyone that's made a rating less than 85, you run them back through the program. We call it recycling. Because every time you have one of these young people assigned to one of the managers of a program in the school system, in the elected field, with the city council, with corporate leaders, they will give them some type of evaluation. They have it, set it up in a rating scale. And if not, create one before you put them in there, so you can see if they don't do 85% to 100%, you need to recycle those people or replace them or put them on a corrective action plan if you want to keep them, and run them through it again for a couple of weeks. If not, just put them on the wayside. I call them, put them on the reserve list. And don't ever call them again. I used to do that years ago when someone didn't want to help themselves after years of training and motivating them and giving them scholarships and money and other things. You have to say, well, I'm not through with you. I'm going to put you on the reserve list or the waiting list. And I want you to just come and see me every now and then and see how your status is on this list. Most times you want to hear from them. You want to hear from them, but usually you don't. They're glad to get away from you, because some people just don't want to learn anything, folks. They don't want to learn anything. They are happy with the situation that they are familiar with. They never had anything. Don't know that if you get something different, your life will change. They don't want change. They just want to stay there in that pecking order that they are in economically and socially. And that pecking order is not going to get them anywhere. Most of them anyway are miseducated, misinformed, don't have the mentors they need, even in the home, to get them in the right direction. But I want to tell you folks, and don't forget this, if you want to lose your status and continue to be what I call citizenry less. You ever heard of that? Citizenry less. It means that you are alleged to be a citizen, but you are less than the others in your citizenship reign. You're just here. You're like a visitor. You're worse than an immigrant. Because most of the immigrants, when they get over to a country and get in large numbers, their leaders going to go and give them amnesty and say, oh, you boys been over here a long time now, you're working. We've been asking for you to come in. We're just going to make you a citizen. And in 30 days, you can vote and get all the benefits of other citizens. You want to have your people trained so they won't fall for that. You want them to earn their citizenship. And that is what's happening now. I'm just going to sort of reflect to another area for a few minutes. That's why you find that there is going to be a merging in leadership in a few years in America. Right now, the Democrats and the Republicans are allowing millions of people, millions, to just walk across the border. We call it the southern border. And they're coming from Asia, Africa, China, all over Latin America, from Israel, from Pakistan, everywhere, coming to America. And they don't even check them. They don't know whether they're criminals. They don't know whether they have major mental problems. They don't know whether they have major physical problems, health problems. They don't know what's wrong with them or what's good about them. They just allow them to come in because they know in a few years, when that number get up to about 50 million and is getting close to it, they all are going to get amnesty. They're just going to say, well, we got you now. You learn how to speak a little English. You're working hard at low wages. We have already taken care of the black folks. We didn't put them in relocation camps in America and throughout the world. We haven't killed them yet, but we got them fixed where they ain't going to learn nothing. We're going to continue to miseducate them. They're not in leadership positions because we have the schools trained to only deal with 10% of the students in the public schools, in the colleges and universities. We don't care too much about the others. Most of you don't want to hear it. But if you want to hear the real news, you have to remember, and I'm getting ready to give a conclusion, don't have but a few more minutes here. You must stay, if you're going to get into a position of responsibility where you are respected, and at least be number 2 and sometimes number 1 in the economic, political, and social order in the country where you live, or in your precinct, or in your state, or in your region, or in your federal government, you must do the following. As leaders in the community, preachers, corporate leaders, school leaders, and others that are managing what we call community organizations, you must learn and recruit new people. You have to recruit them. You have to select them. You must train them. And then you must place them in positions of responsibility. That's why you got to get them to this point where you can get them with a mentor so you can be coached to change things and do it in an orderly manner. Because you don't need nothing but a certain type of people, the new person that you're going to train, the new leaders will have some of the following characteristics because they are not going to be brainwashed. They're not going to be supported by special interest groups that's going to deny full citizenship to their family members, their peers and friends. The black community will need community-based new leaders that have the following characteristics. They're going to have to be loyal. They're going to have to be competent. They are going to have to be aggressive, ladies and gentlemen, aggressive, which means they're going to have to be able to listen and turn down opportunities when they are approached, to be bribed. Say, no, I'm here to have the number 4 characteristics, which is I'm here to be what we call a problem-solving leader. They have to be loyal. They have to be competent. The new leaders must be aggressive, and they must be problem-solving. And we're going to get to that eventually. Before we get to part 10, we're going to teach you how your young people and others can learn how to solve problems, starting at age 2 years of age, through years 40. And I told you when you turn 13, that's when you're going to really get serious and put them in groups where they're going to do something. So folks, I want you to keep in mind, when you have your leaders, your new trainees that are loyal, competent, aggressive, and they have the ability to solve problems, as members of what we call an executive team, and make decisions for their constituents, that's going to elevate all of them instead of 1 or 2 as your current ineffective leaders are doing. You are going to have change then in your community, where your school system will get better. Your elected and appointed officials will be more conducive to listen to you than the current ineffective ones are. And when you know anything, folks, your church leaders will start changing. They will start creating more education and training opportunities. And I'm telling you right now, those elected politicians will stop cheating and lying and stealing your money and spending millions and millions of dollars every year, and don't do nothing for the general welfare of the masses in their areas of responsibility. Nothing. Give the same contracts year after year to the same contractors. They don't even have what we call people that are going to regulate the contract. And if they do, they hire someone that worked with the company they gave the contract to monitor the contract and give them a report. So if you are being paid by the contractor to give a report on your progress, you're going to give it to the Board of Supervisors, you're going to give it to the mayor and the councils. Or you might be a community organization and you're doing the same thing. The leader will get the report. And he's not going to monitor it. He's going to get it in a book or a folder and put it on the shelf. He's not going to even read it. Because in many cases, there are other reasons why he knows not to mess with it, and I'm not going to tell you that publicly. That's why we ask you all to call us if you want to hear the real news that we can't talk about on radio and TV and social media. You call us, and we'll come and talk to you about it and give you the real reasons to talk about these programs. Just call us, 601-201-1957. 601-201-1957, and we'll come to you, folks. Because we want you to learn to change your status from birth to death. We want you to learn how to be progressive and aggressive in those 5 areas of activity that I've been talking about. So, folks, you have to show that if you don't train your people and give them the knowledge they need, your condition will get worse. And in 300 years, instead of getting better, that whole group that has been waiting for people to do something for them, those people that's been praying for years, doing no work, no action, going to find themselves totally as an outcast. They're going to be relocated. They are going to be placed in rural and urban ghettos, relocation camps. Call it what you want to call it, but they'll be ineffective. So, folks, if you want to know the solution on how to solve these problems, I tell you, and we're going to continue to tell you, that if you want to regain the seat at the policy-making table and influence what we call domestic and global social contracts, the black organizations worldwide must include leaders that are going to be impactful, progressive, educated in economic and decision-making activities. They're going to have to be trained and developed leaders that's been coached and mentored by what I call non-contaminated individuals. And I'm usually talking about one that is not currently in a elected or appointed position in the church or in the government or in the corporate leader. There's some excellent folks out there that can supersede with their intelligence those current folks that we have put in office year after year. Thousands of them out there. They just sleeping giants, always criticizing people, always praying, saying the Lord is going to do something for us, when the Lord has already put you here and given you the knowledge to do something for yourself. And that's why, folks, so many people throughout the history of the world have been in slavery for 2 and 3 and 4 and 500 years. Since the early centuries, all kinds of races and groups been in slaves, been in slavery. The Chinese, the Japanese, the Europeans, the Africans, those in Latin America, all over the world at one time or another, they have been enslaved. Been enslaved, folks. Read the history. Just because some people are dominating right now, that same person 2 or 3 centuries ago, somewhere in the world, were slaves. And they fought their way out of it. And the one that I'm going to give you a good example are those Europeans that were serfs and slaves almost in Europe in the 13th and 14th century. They finally got away from Europe, came to America and other places. Most of them totally broke. Many of them came over as serfs and what I call servants of others. Some people call them indentured servants. And then they had another group that got that free ride here to America. And they guaranteed those folks a free ride, free food, a full-time job, just enough health care to keep them alive, and free housing. They called those folks slaves, black slaves. And then when those Europeans got to the point, and I'm talking about all over the world, when they got to the point where they made a chance, got an opportunity to rise economically, get involved in politics in this new country, got to be the bishops and the top leaders in the religious institutions, got to have all the positions as president of the colleges and other educational institutions, were the corporate leaders. They said, now we're going to get together and put a constitution and make it national. And this group that we love, that we gave that free ride here to America, where we gave them a job, food, clothing, and shelter for life, we're going to put that in the Constitution. Look at the Constitution, I believe, 1787, I believe. Check me out. I'm going to tell you certain things. You check me out. Every now and then I might make a slight mistake. You check this out, check it out, and you call us or email us at clu369@gmail.com and say, well, you slipped up a little bit on this matter, and this is the correct version. Do that, and we do get that from time to time. We get a few comments from time to time. We want to be straightened out. Sometimes when you get information from people, your interns and others, they might not give it to you exactly. People make mistakes. Sometimes you don't get it all right when you talk from experience. It's tough up in this world when you're trying to do something that's against the status quo. And I'm telling you, folks, when you get these people trained, you're going to have less competition from the human enemies of mankind. You're going to have more respect. And then the black organizations worldwide will be then what we call top performers. They're going to be productive leaders. And they're going to have what we call a people-centered leadership regime that's going to develop themselves as individuals. It's going to develop their families. And it's going to develop their community organizations, where all the people, all of them, are going to be included. And then you're going to find, I told you before, changes then in your education system. Your churches will start changing. The corporate leaders will start giving you more respect. They'll stop paying you more. I say they'll start paying you more. They forget about what they call the minimum wage. That word will finally disappear, and they would call it the livable wage. A lot of corporate leaders now, folks, pay you something called the minimum wage, $7.35. A few individual states, just a few of them, pay you about 14. Many of them, 10, 11, 9, or $10 an hour. You don't want that. You want a livable wage. $35,000 to $55,000 livable wage, all depends on what state you live in. That's the minimum in certain areas. And then you want to be able to work and improve your salary by getting involved in credentialed programs that will have you in a tier 1, 2, or 3 where you get paid more every time you get a credential that's going to increase your skill based. And that's why I tell you, ladies and gentlemen, everyone is not designed to go and get what we call a 4-year college degree. A lot of black folks don't like to hear that. Most black people I know, especially those my age, always told their children, go and get a college degree in anything. General studies. Think about it. What can you do with a degree in general studies? Go and get one in psychology, social work. Do 2 or 3 years and drop out. You can't do nothing with a degree in that. I know you don't want to hear it. Go and get a degree in entrepreneurship. Do 2 or 3 years, you're in a 3 or 4 or 5 year programs. Don't ever finish anything. Don't graduate with no diploma, no certificate, no kind of credential. You could have just gotten your job after high school and start working somewhere at a community college and get a credential or skill or something in a vocational technical program. And in 3 or 4 years, you'd be making $40,000 to $75,000, and then go to these senior colleges and universities and get that so-called degree. Because you will have the maturity then, ladies and gentlemen, to get one that's going to give you a significant increase in your wages. And you feel then that you have become a real citizen. And that's why next time, folks, we're going to be giving you the information you need, and we will be addressing what we call that new man. The new man. This is, I believe we're going to call this part 5. I'm going to teach you how to do, in part 5, how to reinvent yourself so you can control your destiny from birth to death. Now, what I've been telling you the last 3 periods on how you can change starting at age 2 at home, and then when you get around 13 to 40, you get out of the home and you start getting in positions and training programs. And now, folks, I'm going to start in the next series, and we're going to call that something that you've heard about, how to reinvent yourself, which we have already given you the new term called how to create a new man, how to create new black leaders worldwide in the great state of Mississippi, in the South, in the nation, north, south, east, and west, and throughout the world. It can all happen, folks, and it can start happening in 30, 60, or 90 days. If you get this information that we are sharing and start using it in your local churches, in your schools where they will allow it, and that won't be many, but specifically in your community organizations, your neighborhood associations, or whatever. That's where you do that. That's why I want you to remember always, until you die, organize. Don't criticize the human enemies of mankind, their relatives and corporate supporters. A lot of people tell me, say, Doc, why you say don't criticize people that are hurting you? I'm going to tell you, and I always talk so a third grader and higher can understand what I'm saying. The people that work with you and keep you at a low status in life are going to always do this. And these human enemies of mankind, when they retire or die, you're not going to get their job. It's going to be their relatives or their friends. And you're not their friend, so you won't get it. Your daddy, your mother won't get it. Or you're going to have what we call special interest supporters that will get those jobs. And folks, I tell you, when we get involved in part 6 next time, we're going to be so clear and make this understandable for, I say, third graders. Matter of fact, next time will probably be if you're in the first grade through PhD. You will understand what we are talking about when we say organize, don't criticize the human enemies of mankind, their relatives and their corporate supporters. Now, most of you don't know, if you look at the people that are managing programs in the government, local, state, federal government, in colleges and universities throughout the country, in corporate leaders, guess who the first tier people are that replace the current incompetent? It's their sons, daughters, nieces, nephews, or someone that is recommended by the person that's giving them financial support. It's not you. So they're going to maintain the status quo. And I want you to keep in mind that in order to keep things moving in a progressive manner, new people must come along with the skills to do it. We have too many people that are listening to the wrong people. And when I say the wrong people, I mean the wrong few people. Those that have those status jobs, those control everything, that keep you suffering. All your areas of activity. You don't control anything. And I'm going to show you next time, I only have 2 minutes left in this show, that in order to be successful this decade and beyond, it is so simple to do that. I'm going to give the other version. So if you're in the first grade through the 8th grade, you'll be able to understand. And that's for those people that cannot understand from the 3rd grade up. But when you learn that these steps are so easy, you will be hating yourself for not doing it when you already knew it psychologically, that you know you're not happy, you know you don't feel safe, you know you're broke, you know you are, you know you have bad health, you know your old house note is due all the time, you're paying it, but you know when you get sick, ladies and gentlemen, or divorce, you're going to have to move. You're not going to be able to pay your mortgage or your rent. And your poor old mother or grandmother don't want you coming back. They can't hardly take care of themselves. Now, I just give it to you straight, folks. They love you, but they don't want you coming back and bringing a house full of children back with them, worrying them to death. They're already sick. They're already halfway broke. Because when they worked, they didn't make a lot of money like you. And a lot of them worked hard, saved their money, and bought a little old small 1 or 2 bedroom home on $10,000 and $12,000 a year, even though they might have had 6 or 8 children. And here you are with a college degree. No more than 2 kids, sometimes 3, that made from $50,000 to $150,000 a year, and you're still living in an apartment paying rent. You still have 2 or 3 car notes. You have no life insurance, no will, no long-term health care initiative, no nothing. Just halfway breathing. I say halfway. And that's why, as I conclude, folks, I want to tell you, call someone and say next week, including this Friday, the Eldridge Henderson Real News Show will be back. And on tomorrow, it'll be the Doc and Sock Show. Socrates and Eldridge Henderson will be talking about the same thing: education, economic development, leadership, religion, and politics. Those are the areas you need to know about. You've got to learn how to control them. And until next week, folks, I want you to keep in mind, if you want to contact us, all you have to do is call us at 601-201-1957, or you call us at 1-800-492-5186 and say, I want to talk to you. So you need to come and talk to us at our community organization, at our conference, at our family reunions. You need to come to our schools. I'll talk to the principal, I'll talk to the president, I'll talk to the dean, and see if you can come and talk to us. We will talk to people, groups of 5 or more. We'll go up to 10 or 15,000. We will go to a conference, regional or state or national, international conference, and talk to your folks in a little simple seminar or workshop. Or if you need the keynote speaker, we can do that for you and give you what you need. And as I conclude, I want to say thank you for listening. And next time, call someone and tell them to listen to the Eldridge Henderson Real News Show. Always remember, folks, organize. Don't criticize the human enemies of mankind, their relatives, and their corporate supporters. I say it again. Organize. Don't criticize. I'll see you next time. Thank you very much.